Fight!
Castlevania Portrait of Runes was the second game released on the DS. When I first played this game, I thought it was just okay, but after replaying it, I ended up liking this a lot, more than my first playthrough, though there are still a few issues. Let's talk about the story first. The game takes place in 1944 during the Second World War, which causes Dracula's castle to appear. This time you take control of Jonathan and Charlotte. Jonathan is the son of John Morris from Castlevania Bloodlines, and is currently the successor to the vampire killer, even though he can't fully use it yet. As Jonathan and Charlotte make their way into the castle, they will run into a ghost named Wind, and we find out a vampire named Bronner is currently in control of the castle, which you need to stop by going into the paintings throughout the castle to weaken them. As you make your way through the castle, you will meet vampire sisters who are Bronner's daughters, and you will eventually meet Death. You will eventually fight Stella, and after defeating her, she will drop a locket that has a picture of the girls and Wind. Once you talk to Wind, you will learn that they are actually the daughters of Wind, and that Bronner took them due to the grief of losing his own daughters. Wind also reveals himself to be Eric, which was the other playable character in Castlevania Bloodlines. As you make your way further down the castle and defeat Death and the four main paintings, you will have your final showdown with Stella and Loretta. And with like most Castlevania games, this boss will decide if you get the good ending or the bad ending. To go on the right path of the good ending, you will need to get Charlotte's purification skill and use it in battle, which will turn them human again. Once they are defeated, you will have to go through 4 more paintings and then defeat Bronner. The sisters can also help Jonathan to use the full power of the vampire killer, which in order to do so, you will have a neat battle with Richter Belmont that you have to win. This is actually optional though, but it's worth it because the vampire killer is a very powerful weapon. Anyway, after doing the 4 remaining paintings and defeating Bronner, you will then find out that Dracula was revived, and you must stop him, which leads up to one of the best battles in the entire Castlevania series. Fighting both Dracula and Death was awesome. Once Dracula is defeated, the castle will crumble, the sisters will feel bad at what transpired and say goodbye to their father. Jonathan and Charlotte will run off to find the shopkeeper Victor that I actually somewhat forgot about, and that pretty much is the ending to the story. All in all, I thought the story was solid. I like Jonathan and Charlotte as characters, and I like how Jonathan has to come to terms about his father. The side characters like the sisters and Bronner are okay, and I like Eric's mentor-like role, and I think the story overall was pretty decent. I mean, like I said in my previous video, you don't really play the Castlevania games for like, you know, a big, huge story or anything, but it served its purpose. Now moving from story to the game itself. So, Castlevania Portrait of Runes is a Metroidvania with Super Mario 64 elements thrown in. So, like Super Mario 64, you will go inside the paintings and will unlock more the further you progress. The main gimmick of this game is that you play with both Jonathan and Charlotte, and can switch at any time, and together you can solve puzzles, do team attacks, call on one to use their sub-weapon, and you can have your partner follow you around for extra damage, which it's a pretty cool concept that I think works very well. Like most of the Castlevania Metroidvanias, you will explore the castle, level up, buy weapons and items. So since your 2 characters are different from Soma and can't use souls, they instead have sub-weapons. Jonathan is your typical Belmont character with sub-weapons from the classic games, along with some of his own different varied sub-weapons to use, which are pretty cool. Charlotte has spells and can charge them up for more power. Enemies can also drop sub-weapons along with other gear to collect, which makes killing enemies satisfying. The other cool thing about sub-weapons is the mastery. So the more you use them, the stronger they will get. As far as weapons go, Jonathan is kinda like Soma, where he uses a bunch of different weapons like swords, axes, lances, etc. Unlike Soma though, Jonathan can use whips, and there are a nice variety of whips you can use with different elemental properties, with the strongest being the Vampire Killer, which has a holy element and does heavy damage to most enemies in the game. Charlotte only has books, but her magic makes up for the lack of weapons. As you explore the castle and various paintings, there are also a lot of secret rooms to discover, like most Metroidvanias. There's also side quests that you can do for Wind, which has some good rewards, though the side quests are mostly just okay, and it's just to further pad the game. As usual, the bosses in the game are great. They can be fun and challenging, with the best boss fight being Dracula and Death. And like I said before, it is hands down the best final boss in the whole series. This game also has a few neat extras. You can play Richter mode, which is pretty cool, and you can also unlock a mode where you play as the two sisters, although it kinda, I don't know, I didn't find it that fun. It's like mostly you have to use the DS touchpad for that. And there's also a boss rush mode, and it's pretty cool because you can also fight bosses from Dawn of Sorrow. Now moving on to the level design and the castle itself, this is where I have a few issues with the game. Now, the paintings are a cool concept and let you explore unique areas like, a desert, a circus, and whatnot. The problem I have is the second part of the game has you explore the same areas with a slight difference. They're mostly just a palette swap with stronger enemies and new music, and while I do enjoy the new music, it's a shame they didn't give us new areas. And the other issue I have is with the castle itself. Since most of the areas in the game are paintings, the castle design kinda suffers for it. It's small with areas that are pretty standard areas, like you have your entrance, a small forgettable underground area, a staircase, a clock tower, and an area leading to the top, and that's it. Like, there's no laboratory, no library, no garden, and nothing that's really unique. Hell, the worst part is there isn't even a final area leading up to the final battle. That's pretty disappointing. Like, you defeat Bronner and then you just go in a room for the final boss. The recycled paintings and lackluster castle design are really the only issues I have with the game. But what isn't lackluster is the music. Honestly, I think this game has the strongest soundtrack out of all the DS Castlevania games. There are just so many good songs. Just listen to a few. When all is said is done, Castlevania Portrait of Ruins is a very fun, solid addition to the IGA Castlevania games, and it's different enough from Dawn of Sorrow for a different experience. Like with all the DS Castlevania games, it's one of my favorite in the series. In the next video, I will talk about the last DS Castlevania, Order of Alcalicia.